Welcome to another episode of You&AI. We are here today with Dr. Walter Sun, who is the Senior Vice President and Global Head of Artificial Intelligence at SAP. Walter leads a centralized AI unit that builds AI products which can be used across most of the SAP applications. Prior to SAP, Walter was a Vice President of Copilot AI for business applications at Microsoft. And before that, he worked at BlackRock and at Apple. Great to have you here today, Walter.
Thank you for having me. Great to talk to you, Johannes.
Walter, I introduced you very briefly already, but maybe you can share a little bit more about your work and what is it that you do as SAP's Global Head of AI?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for asking. I basically lead the product engineering for AI capabilities, which what that means is my team builds reusable AI capabilities for internal product teams, lines of businesses, as well as for developers through our business technology platform. So this includes things like one thing that's very reusable, even as narrow AI was originally was basically document understanding, taking a receipt from a business trip, taking a scan, doing the OCR, and then on top of that, understanding what the bits of that image are in terms of like understanding that this is a hotel receipt with dates, expense amount, and expense topics or reasons. And so it's kind of one example. More recently, in the past couple of years, we've been focused on generative AI. And so our team has released features like the Generative AI Hub, which has over 40 large language models, which developers as well as our lines of businesses can use. And so I've been working on AI since my PhD days at MIT. In a different form, I think that, in the early days of AI, people didn't really understand what it was, but I think machine learning, finding ways to do inference and technologies. But more recently, with the big rise of generative AI, I think everyone understands what artificial intelligence is. But it's something I'm really excited about and passionate about, helping humans get assistance from machines in all sorts of ways.
At least everybody talks about AI now. Yeah, that we can say.
Exactly. That's right. That's correct.
Yeah, thanks for that. I think something that's been, at least it feels like it's gotten more prominent over the last couple of months is SAP Joule. How does that fit into that picture that you just described there?
Yeah, that's a great question. So Joule is our AI copilot. And the idea behind Joule is that using natural language into Joule, you can actually chat with our systems. And so the idea is that Joule is integrated into all of our SAP products. And so for those of you not familiar with SAP, we have products from human capital management and success factors. We have a CRM solution. We have our ERP and S4 HANA. And so I think the solutions that we have are good for different business users, finance users, supply chain users. We have a solution, human capital management, as I mentioned, even travel, Concur. We are as a part of SAP. So the idea is that with Joule, using natural language, you can access all of your systems. The same way that something like a GitHub Copilot democratizes the ability for developers to write code, something like Joule democratizes the ability for business workers to kind of access all of their systems. So imagine if you're a new employee at a company that uses SAP, you could actually, without learning the UX systems across each of the products, automatically go to work. You can say, hey, I just need to take a vacation over the holidays, Christmas holidays. Can I take a vacation? Rather than understanding which tool to open, where the time off tool is, you can actually just say in natural language, I want to take a vacation December 26th to December 31st. Please do it for me. I want to understand, if Johannes, if you're my colleague, if I want to look at org charts, who's Johannes's organization or what does his team do, rather than understanding what tools are necessary. In the old days, you might spend 3 months ramping up to the company's tools. This kind of accelerates, and then it doesn't fully replace in the sense that we actually provide the actions in the background, and by doing so, you can actually learn as well. So basically, you type the request, the application pops up. So then if you think you're a power user or become a power user, you can actually still use the application. So you have a choice to go either way.
Yeah, I think that is a tremendous opportunity, particularly in the ERP space, right? Where I think user experience and how do I make this as easy as possible for as many users as possible has always been a challenge. Yeah, I think that's very exciting to see those things happening in that space. Also for what we do, I think any kind of workflow, that's sort of like the next generation of how we interact with technology, right? From on-premise to cloud, and soon I think a lot of the traditional workflows. Why would I even enter that tool if I can speak to something or if I have these new interfaces? So
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
really exciting to hear. Yeah.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And on top of just like, I mentioned the proactive chat interface, we also have system triggered agents where actually, kind of like you said, the systems can actually automatically proactively alert you. So if you're a supply chain manager, you might say, I just woke up this morning, what's happened overnight I'm in the US, or in Asia, for instance, or even in Europe, which the day is almost over by then. So the whole idea of like having system triggered agents is if there's a weather system in South Asia that causes a problem, or if there's some type of disruption in a rail strike in the EU,
Yeah.
inform me. And so it's proactive. And further, I mean, on top of being reactive of you asking questions, can be proactive as well as saying, hey, you have these actions you need to take as soon as you wake up each day.
Yeah. Yeah. That's an interesting pattern. By the way, I've interviewed several board members, executives in the You&AI format already, and I
Yeah.
think a big shift many see in terms of the opportunity they have with AI now is they don't want to go into reports or other kind of summaries someone creates for them, but really have this agent come to them. And
That's right. That's right.
yes, you might also want to ask questions instead of going through
Absolutely.
pages of reports, but even
Right.
better if this thing comes to you and lets you
Right.
know and summarize what's relevant. I think
That's right.
that's a big shift most people appreciate and looking for, waiting for. Yeah.
Exactly. Right. You have a report, and you can also ask questions. It's funny. It's like, if I prepared a report for you, you might say, "Hey, Walter, I have these questions." The AI can also handle that too as well. It's like, "Hey, in this report you just presented to me, I have questions about the consequences or the recommendations given," and then it can actually, with natural language, process those questions as well. So it's kind of quite nice in terms of the strength and capabilities these systems can do for you now.
So we definitely will come back to what you do in your work and what you maybe also
Okay.
did in the past. I
Yeah.
expected this also, like already, given that we're both working with that kind of technology,
Of
we need
course.
to make sure we're not getting too nerdy.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
one
Absolutely.
one
Yes.
one one key idea of this format here is really to get to know different kind of leaders and understanding how they not just build AI products and experiences, but also how they use AI in their everyday life, what role it plays. I think someone with your background, really working with AI or really this goes back to MIT times, as you said, right? It's
Mm.
particularly interesting. So maybe we can look at in like a typical day in your life.
Okay.
I think you're based in Seattle in the US.
Yes. Yes.
So how does your work week look like, and how do you
Yeah.
interact with AI
Yeah.
throughout the day? Also as a professional, a leader, maybe even as a private person.
It's a great. Thank you for asking. I think good question. I think on a daily basis, I try to leverage generative AI for things like summarization for documents or from meetings I have, like online meetings, and even translations. This part is really true because we're a global company. I'm based in Seattle, as you mentioned, and we're a German company with a big presence in Asia as well, and also Australia and New
Yeah.
Zealand. So, given that global workforce, sometimes documents or emails come in different languages. And so, being able to summarize content as well as summarizing content, translating content to languages that I understand also is really valuable. I think that, um, I'm actually I'm learning different languages more, learning German better. But I think that even though I don't know it really well, I can actually see email chains which have a mix, and I can be able to understand what's happening. So those type of things I do every day. Um, yeah, that's generative AI. The funny thing is, I hear people tell me they don't use AI in their jobs, but they use search engines. So I
Yeah.
just quickly caveat that, I do use AI in many other areas, which are more traditional AI, something like search technologies, which is deep AI. You have reinforcement learning, you have ways of improving and customization and personalization. I think that
Yeah.
people don't realize it. So I use search engines a lot for leverage that a lot. Auto completion of code and text, recommendation features and purchasing decisions, and also maybe even who to include in emails. All of that kind of is AI centric. So I do a lot of that. And I think I gave you the example earlier as well about like, when you wake up in the morning, what's happened. It's also very helpful to have these kind of summaries. Even though I start my day, as we talked before we started recording, at like 4 in the morning because I'm already on the West Coast. I'm already 9 time zones from Middle Central Europe. There's still things happening. It's lunchtime in Germany, so or after lunch.
Exactly.
So there's a whole morning that's already happened, and in Asia, a whole day has happened, or many hours have happened since I went to sleep as well. So having the ability to use AI to help summarize and kind of digest some of the information and make it easier. It's really valuable. I think that first hour in the morning, I'm like, man, I'm thankful for having, information at my fingertips rather than having to spend 2 hours trying to figure out what's happening. So that's kind of what happens. But yeah, during the day, I try to leverage AI and technology as much as possible because, all of us have more. I'm sure you do too, and everyone else, is more than enough things to do in a regular workday. So the more that we can get acceleration for like summarizing and kind of getting to the root cause or bottom line or a decision to be made for a lot of different things, it really helps a lot.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. I think AI has gotten, particularly the last 2 or 3 years, has gotten
Hmm.
commoditized so quickly
Yes.
that wherever
Hmm.
it's natively embedded in products, people don't even recognize it. I guess it's
Right.
like similar with any
Uh,
technology evolution, right? We
yes.
talked a lot about the mobile internet
Yes.
10, 15 years ago, and nobody would make that distinction anymore.
Yes.
So that's interesting. Um, are there any areas for someone who's so AI native himself?
Yes.
Are there any areas where you don't use AI where it might be surprising because others do, and you say like, no, it's not there yet, or I don't trust it, or I can do it for data security reasons. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think for my personal use, I'm pretty flexible in terms of I'm happy to use, like you said, a lot of things we do people don't even realize is is AI powered or ML machine learning powered. So I think that most of the technologies I try to leverage, I don't try to steer away from that from a personal perspective. But for work, you're right. Definitely, there are things that are limitations that whether it be compliance or whatever. Every time there's new technologies of like vibe coding, other things, we have to make sure we go through compliance. I'm sure business enterprise workers have the same problem, but basically you want to go through the
Yeah,
challenge of understanding the consequences, whether it be the IP creation of content as well as like the security of the models or the technology. So definitely those are things that we do. My team and I are careful for business application use.
hmm and if we talk about from the individual experience to the team and the collaboration
Yeah.
experience, what do you observe there? And maybe also what do you do to drive AI adoption in your surrounding? I think
Hmm.
what
Hmm.
we experience, and this is like a quite a young technology company,
It is.
but
Yes.
still
Yes.
it's a certain effort, right? And it takes time, and different teams have a different pace with regards to adoption. So, what are your experiences there? Any things
Yeah.
that you did that worked to
Yeah.
accelerate adoption there?
Yeah, absolutely. So we started in 2023 with some Gen AI learning days, and even my prior company in the early 2020s, we also did some kind of AI days as well. Basically, giving people the idea of explaining what the technology is. I think that you see news reports, you see consumer chat GPT come out, people have an idea but not a deep understanding. And the problem with that is that if you have only an idea, it becomes very dangerous because you might have the wrong idea. So having these learning days, spending a whole day of sessions, inviting the entire company to participate, I think that goes a long way. Just we also set up a SAP a launch pad or internal playground, if you will, where you can
Yeah,
actually go and try out many LLMs. We have 40 plus now. When we first launched it, it was like around 10 or something. But either way, it's like, a certain model like ChatGPT is one type of model, the GPT models, but like, there's other ones out there. And so giving people a chance to try different things out, it's almost like if you go to like a soda machine and you're used to drinking one type of soda and you have a choice of like six sodas, maybe over time you try different ones, you might discover a
yeah,
better one, and so that's one thing we did. And then 2 years later, which is this year, we actually also added AI agents training or day as well because Gen AI was first like there are these large language models that are out there and you can use them, but now it's like we actually have these AI agents out there that can do a lot more with powered by LLMs. So I think as there's new technologies and new information, it's best to let your employees understand what's available and how to use it so that they both can leverage it, which is the first thing, and also on top of that, as we discussed a few minutes ago, like we can also make sure that people know the guardrails, making sure that we care about the impact of AI, but we also care about the ethical, secure, and compliant use of it across our organizations.
yeah, yeah. So I think you've nicely laid out how AI helps a lot, like in these individual use case where it's about translating, summarizing, making sure you stay on top of things. Um, I assume SAP being a very engineering-driven company, you use AI a lot
Hmm.
in software
Yeah.
development. I think
Yes.
that's where we've seen the at least the earliest and most significant productivity increases.
Hmm.
Um, how's that evolving? And what do you
Yeah.
experience in like more collaborative setups? Right, a use case that we're working on a lot and that I find particularly interesting is meetings and these live situations.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you see use cases there? What are your experiences?
Yeah. I guess the first thing is, yeah, when in meetings, we have these auto summarization technologies. And I really like those because it saves a lot of time for the product manager or the person running the meeting, where you actually get a summary. If you miss the meeting, you can catch the summary. And also sometimes people will curate that summary. And I think that's really valuable, in the sense that in the old days, when I say old days, could be 2 or 3 years ago, we have one person in a meeting of 10 spending 15, 20 minutes taking notes maybe during the meeting, and also summarizing and writing about. Now you have this summary, and the summary is like mostly correct, and then people send it out. Usually, I hope people actually curate them as well, but I know that people don't curate them when you get these homonyms. I don't know. You mentioned Joule,
Exactly.
which is spelled Joule, right? Like the energy component. And if you see oftentimes the summary says Jewel as like the other Joule, you know that someone used generative AI and didn't fix it. So it's fine, but I think the point, I guess, is that you can tell. It's funny. I think that's interesting that people are using it, and you see people with homonyms in the system. That's a great way to understand. But I do think that other use cases of, like, hey, if you're trying to create content, if you're doing things, I use this idea of, like, that you asked earlier also about the challenges, is this idea of, like, quality in, quality out. I guess I call that's a euphemism for garbage in, garbage out, I guess. So basically, when a generative AI is requested to take action or respond, you want to be very clear and exact into what you ask. I think people say, oh, these models aren't good if they give really bad instructions. And then you look at the instructions going in, you realize, hey, use an analogy that I think of as like asking a child, even nephew, niece, or child, ask a 10-year-old a question. And sometimes they'll give you literally a verbal answer, right? If you say, hey, it's raining, right? And you think, maybe the child should wear a jacket or an umbrella. If you say, hey, what should you do before you go outside? The child's like, I'm not sure that's a very kind of vague question. Maybe I should brush my teeth. Should I, put my shoes on? It's like, if I say, do you want to have an umbrella or a jacket? Then the child will give you the right answer. Same with an LLM. If you ask an LLM, hey, I look outside, or you can check the forecast online, what should I do? It's like, what does that mean, right? Does that mean should I go, buy snow boots? Should I go? I mean, there's a lot of things you can ask, but if you ask the Gen AI very specific questions, you get the right answers. And so I think of it like a cook. If you have the right ingredients and the right recipe, which is the prompt, you can actually serve up excellent outcomes. But if you don't, then you end up with something that you don't want to eat.
Yeah, yeah. I think you're describing really this AI adoption curve where a lot of teams we meet also like seem to stop or struggle already in these
Yeah,
early days, where it's probably the most important frontiers of AI literacy. You really need to also get into prompt engineering, context engineering, and
exactly.
then you'll only really have the benefits there. Yeah.
Yes.
So most people I meet in this podcast here, they say like I kind of really see AI making decisions for me, but AI increasingly plays a role in preparing decisions and assisting.
Hmm.
What's your point on that? Because you also mentioned, right, like this human in the loop element
Yes.
is
It's
super
big.
important.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think the more important the decisions get,
Yep.
the more this is relevant, because ultimately it's also about accountability and these kind of things,
Nice.
liability in the corporate.
Yes.
So how do
Yes.
you see this develop?
Yeah, I mean, the liability question, accountability is big. I think there was a WalkMe survey that found 78% of professionals in America, at least, use AI tools that aren't approved by their employer. And so I think that the idea is that you need proper training, as I mentioned earlier, in guardrails, and you kind of mentioned the liability. People need to understand, hey, what can I use, what can I not use, and so there should be clarity there. As I mentioned, also human in the loop is also the idea that you want to just make sure you just double check, even if not at the beginning. Maybe if you think I have a 99% confidence this is right, still double check. I mean, I think that I tell people these AI, almost like AI agents, are almost like junior assistants. We at
Yeah.
SAP have called these AI assistant technologies, which are personas. And it's almost like, imagine if each of us had an assistant. If you had an assistant doing your work, you might ask him or her to do something like, hey, set up a meeting with Walter, give him the briefing or whatever. But, you might want to periodically check the work. First, at least first time. Maybe if you do this every week, then maybe after the 50th time, you leave him alone. But the first couple of times, like, oh, you scheduled a meeting in the middle of the night for Walter. He's in Seattle. So basically, the early employee, just like an AI, might have missed time zones. And so, okay, now once the system knows, you need to actually add the prompt, schedule a meeting with Walter in a favorable time zone for both me
Yeah.
and him. And so understanding how to make modifications with human in the loop. I think that much the same way you would double check a human, you'd also have this early double checks, right? Or even maybe always you want to just make sure everything is reasonable. I mentioned a joke about the homonym of Joule, and Joule is like, it's not a problem. Readers understand, but it is kind of like slightly embarrassing. That, hey, you didn't bother to double check it, right? But those type of things I think are goodness. But I think that you're asking kind of in the future how it works as well. I think that there's just going to be more power. I think compute power in technology and capabilities. So the combination is that we started with one model, which is the company-wide model, or just one model for everybody, and then you can
Yeah.
also say, okay, I have one model which is a lot. You can fine tune it to a company or industry first, I guess, and then you go to a company. So you go from whole world one model, now industry-wide model, finance models, supply chain models, maybe software models, and each of these are kind of less multiple models. And then after that, you go more narrow by company model. Each company has its own policies. You can prompt it or tune it appropriately. And then even longer is like having individual models, or in each individual, you and I have our own personal assistant. So I think
Yeah.
that's kind of how I see the evolution.
Yeah.
It's a combination of computation and also the models being fine-tuned and the ability to use reinforcement learning to
Yeah.
personalize and customize each individual.
Yeah. From what I hear, and I think this metaphor is nice, you
Hmm.
do believe that we will move from AI agents moving from being junior assistants to senior advisors, and maybe even, I don't know, will there be the AI executive one day?
It's a good question. I heard someone told me that one of the Eastern European country has AI as one of their I think members of their parliament or members of
Yeah.
the government. And so it's interesting. I think that I would just take it caution in terms of like we don't want to move too fast, right? I think going
Yeah.
from like, hey, let's we have a junior assistant, and next thing you know, you make them the president. The same reason you hire a person out of college and he or she does a great job. You say let's make them the CEO of the company. No, it's not, maybe a little bit too fast. I think that we should actually go through the process of understanding what these capabilities can do and making sure that the guardrails are there as well. And because as I mentioned, this quality in, quality out statement is
Yeah.
like we need to make sure no matter what, you might accidentally put someone in control and give it the wrong instructions. It's like, hey,
Yeah.
optimize, routing for my employees' vacation, business trips, and so the problem there is maybe optimization could be flights at 3 in the morning. Like, oh, the cheapest and fastest are the ones that kick off at 3 in the morning. And it's like, well,
Yeah.
suddenly employees are like, this AI is doing some crazy things, and you need to actually prompt it. Okay, employees only want to travel between 7 a.m. and 10 p.m. and also, X, Y, and Z. So those type of things. Like basically, you want to make sure you don't let something just kind of have full autonomy when we've not fully given it the instructions that it needs to be given. It's like like we also don't put. There's like in the U.S. at least there's like a minimum age for president at 35. It
Yeah.
might seem arbitrary, but it's like mostly like do you want a 10-year-old running the country? It's like, well, you know, and it would be unlikely people would vote someone in like that. But if there was no guardrails like that, then something could happen. So in a similar
Yeah.
vein, I think that we want to make sure that the AI are properly trained and learned, and slowly work their way towards giving the technology more and more decision making powers, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes absolute sense. Um, I guess it also really doesn't matter how long it will take, and if that ever happens. I just think it's an interesting conversation to follow right now, right? With like there's people on the one end of the spectrum talking about general AI is very close, and then
Hmm.
others saying like as long as OpenAI first now does like AI for slop videos and social media and AI for erotic content, we're probably still gonna have to wait some for longer. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. I think that people are on either end, right? Some people tell me AI doesn't do anything that works. Some other people say AI is going to take over everything. I think that we're in the middle, right? I think that those are hot takes in the sense that you hear people
Yeah.
want to kind of at least want to portray it as like, okay, it doesn't work at all. And you say, people, why does it not work? And you see people giving very vague instructions like, hey, do X, Y, and Z for me, but the model has no idea what your context is, so it doesn't do the right thing. On the other hand,
Yeah.
you actually try something that's amazing, or you see a demonstration. I like these in particular. I mean, when we do demonstrations, obviously companies, not just us, everybody, wants to find ones that work, right? And so it's easy to extrapolate that. Hey, I did an example of AI predicting, let's say, what I should do today. It can do everything every day for everybody. Right? It's more like, hey, for some reason this worked, right? And so it's okay, but one should actually look behind under the covers, if you will, to see exactly what the limitations are. And so we end up somewhere in between. And I think that
Yeah.
it's fine. I think with any technology, like you mentioned at the beginning, that we start using technology when we're comfortable with it. And we don't have to call it anything. So we use search as search. We don't like say, oh, I'm kind of afraid of this reinforcement learning, like learning what my preferences are. I mean, if you know the guardrails of the privacy constraints of what's in a search engine, you can say, okay, now I understand. it customizes for me, but it won't send that information to Walter or whatever, right? And it's basically, and that's not bad, being customized, knowing what country you're in, what your preferences are. Let's say if you ask a question that's could be sports related, or it could be music related, or city related. I tell people like Boston, there's a band, there's a city, and there's sports teams, and so
Yeah.
if you kind of know what one's leaning is, then you might get the right search results. Same thing with the AI. If you woke up in the morning and say something about Boston, the AI should kind of know your context. Like, oh, you're actually looking to go to a concert, or you're actually looking to fly to the city, or you're actually looking to look at how the sports teams are doing this week.
Yeah, that makes sense. As we were already talking about the future, I'd like to get to personal opinion, most exciting question of this podcast format, and
Okay.
that is about your dream agent. So again,
Mm-hmm.
we're staying focused on the future. We can
Yeah.
ignore some of the limitations we still have today. But if you think about your dream agent and maybe one or two use cases there, this perfect assistant or advisor, what would it do for you? What kind of dream agent will you have in a couple of years from now? How will it work for you?
Yeah, I think I talked a little bit about how we go from one LLM to industry specific LLMs to now, company wide. I think that, and it's costly today. We can't afford it, but in the future, when compute gets much cheaper again and more powerful, we could all theoretically have personal agents that can work like you have human agents, right? Some executives have access to assistants, but I think that for everybody in the world to have an agent, like an agent in everybody's home, right? Just like the whole 35 years ago about the computer in everybody's desktop or desk at home. It's like, if a dream is having a perfect agent that actually can understand and predict your needs. And so I think we're not at full precision yet, obviously, and also it can be on a machine. That's fine. It could be handled with natural language, but like understanding, like as I mentioned, knowing which emails I should answer, kind of prioritizing them with full precision. Chats that come up, oftentimes there are a lot of questions that are like binary response, right? Like someone's like, "Hey, are we still on for lunch Friday?" A system can actually look at your calendar and say, "Oh, the meeting with Johannes and Walter is scheduled for Friday." Then the machine can automatically say, "Yes, it's on my calendar at noon," right? And then that's their restaurant preferences, or just understanding, like even like perfect memory. One thing I'd like is like, as I get older, my memory gets worse. But like, oh, I met Johannes 2 years ago at a conference. Where were we at? And so it's like,
Yeah,
a system should say, hey, Walter, you and him met in this conference in Prague or whatever on October 12th, 2023 or whatever. And that would be like very valuable in a sense that it augments your memory so you don't have to remember everything. The same reason that, I think calculus reduce the people's needs to kind of know how to do a lot of rote calculations very deeply, although I still think people should know basic computation. These type of technologies can help save your memory for other things, right? We have limited memory in our brains, like computers are limited storage. And so if we can actually have systems help you recall and find information, it goes a long way in the sense that I don't know if people realize how valuable it is, right? Like the whole idea of like how much time do you spend in a day trying to recall something that you need, whether it be just when you're in your email responding to someone else, or even in our conversation now. Like I want to give you an analogy about something. I'm like, oh yeah, we did this in 2023, for this AI learning days at SAP. But like if I forgot the date, or if I forgot like, what was technology X or Y that I did in graduate school, I can have that system say, hey Walter, you actually did this. Remember this? And here's a link to your PDF that you published in 1995, 96. Those type of things would help me. I think that it might seem like not a sea change, but as I mentioned earlier, I don't expect like these technologies to automatically like just do everything all the time. This is just kind of making our lives easier, and that's kind of what
yeah,
I think is the main theme for even for SAP. How we want to build Joule and other technologies to make the lives of business workers easier. I think that's
yeah,
kind of my dream.
yeah. So I hear like two main themes from what you described. One is a little bit about like knowledge management and just like
Yes.
externalize and amplify your own brain capacity, and the other one is maybe more a bit about managing all your conversational
Yes.
streams, all communications, all
Communications.
relationships also.
Yes,
Um,
relationships.
and I'm like at Workpath we launched this AI agent canvas where we try to like always
Yeah.
structure
Yeah.
these use cases. Maybe if we go to the second use case,
Yeah.
we always have like input, output, outcome, impact,
Yes.
right?
Right.
And if we talk about this relationship and communications agent, what do you think are the most important input sources? Is this calendar, Teams, mails, or like what kind of context does this agent need in order to provide the perfect experience for you there?
Yeah, great question. I think it's like, of course, opted in. Your calendar is important, and maybe like you have a work calendar and a personal calendar. Obviously combine both. If this is your full-time agent, access to your emails and all communications, text messages. I think that just being more efficient. Someone was asking me just a week or two ago about like, are we really more efficient? And I said, of course we are. Think about 1875 or whatever, when even the beginning of the telegraph. Like before telegraph, if I wanted to talk to you, I had to go to your house. We couldn't be doing this right now, right? And then it's okay. The telegraph came around. I could communicate with you with messages or using Morse code, right? And so then we have some way to communicate. And then the telephone comes around. I can call you, but it's just low quality, low frequency audio communication. And then the internet came around, and so as we go further and further, we get more and more efficient. And so then being able to, I think right now, coordinating activities. Let's say you have a birthday party coming up and you want to invite 15 of your friends to a party. Even that, I think, has changed a lot for the better over the years. In 1995, you would call or 1990, you'd call your friends one by one, leave messages if they have voicemail. If they don't have an answering machine, then you're out of luck. You keep calling them. And then you have email, right, and text messaging. But like now, if a system has everyone's access to everyone's calendars, we don't even have to have the back and forth. Even though you can send a Teams invite or some type of meeting invite saying, "Hey, Friday noon birthday party." Two people decline and say, "I actually have a conflict." Okay, now you go Saturday noon. Oh, some of that doesn't work. Saturday, and then so you go back and forth, and even that, while more efficient than calling people 35 years ago, it actually still is inefficient. So if there's some way of systems looking at people's calendars, knowing what's most important. Maybe like you have another lunch meeting at noon on Friday that could move to Saturday or Thursday. Then maybe the system would say, "Oh, Johannes, we'd rather not do Friday. Could do Saturday, but if worst case, you can do Friday and move something else." And then there's a optimization going on amongst the 15, 16 attendees of your party, and those type of things still save time. It still takes humans time today and bandwidth. And so those type of things I think would be the next step towards like efficiency for our work, our daily life.
One of the first tools our colleagues at the AI Bootcamp are always sharing is our AI agent Canvas. No matter what technology you use, it helps you to get clear on what problem you want to solve with AI, what your AI agent should do for you, and how it can actually save you time. So check it out. You can download it from the show notes. That's super exciting. I think particularly the calendar interface I'm particularly curious about. We also experiment a lot around this because right at Workpath we have we usually are the database. We have the execution graph, we call it, where basically we know about a company's or a team's priorities, the goals. And if you can give that as context, like what are my goals, what are this team's goals, then you already have some indications that can also help you like managing your time and like your calendar, right? So these kind of context and how you can combine these kind of data. I think there are some really, really exciting use cases. And then I think the big question is really going to be, you mentioned both, right? And on the one hand, AI might first communicate to you and make suggestions or raise issues.
Start there.
But you also mentioned topics where it will just take over for you and give the feedback to the friend right away, or maybe to the friend's agent. And then we just need to find ways, how do we define the scope? What do we allow these agents, right? And what kind of context are they allowed to make these decisions and calls?
That's right. And I think the context is important, right? Like making decisions which aren't life-threatening or dangerous. Like, deciding that we're having lunch on Friday, then you looking back and say, "Oh, I really would rather not do Friday. I want to do Saturday." Not the end of the world, but like deciding that you're going to have a surgery on Friday and then sending you there to the hospital when you don't want the surgery or if it's life, if it's risky. I think those type of things, you still want to have more human control. But I think that simple things, which a lot of our stuff, I don't want to oversimplify. A lot of our daily activities are simple, right? Scheduling meetings, lunches, meeting people. Those things are easy. I think things that have like financial impact, once you buy a ticket, a flight, which is not refundable, or once you make reservations for some event, like let's say a concert or a sporting event, where it's not refundable. Those things you want to double check or triple check. But like things which are like schedule a meeting, which can be moved. I'm not saying people should not fulfill their commitments, but things happen, right? Or new conflicts happen, things move. But I think that that's where we should start. And I think that Workpath, I'm glad to see you're working on agents as well in that area. I think that even like if you look at my calendar, a lot of people at SAP have access to my calendar. It's a kind of the way we do things, and so
Yeah.
I have different color codes so people can know like what's highest importance, middle importance, or low, not low importance, but like movable, right? Meanings which are movable, meanings which can't be moved, I guess maybe. And those type of notations and AI can quickly learn and say, oh, okay, this is absolutely not movable. This is with the CEO, and you can't mess with the CEO's time. But this is like with your colleagues who are flexible, whatever, or whatever, and you can make those changes.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks a lot. So that's some of the capabilities of your dream agent there. I have to ask this because you've been at Microsoft, now you're at SAP. I think zooming out again, one interesting question is how will the enterprise IT landscape look with these new interfaces that are rising now, right? Because obviously we have still lots of tools in the enterprise, lots of different programs or browser tabs that you have to open. So I wonder, like, what do you think? Will there be a set of like just 2 or 3 super agents, and all the other companies will build like rather capabilities in there? Or how do you have a view on that? How this might develop?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think that I feel like there'll be a few like major like orchestrators, but not a single one. And that's why this A to A, agent to agent communication will be important. I think that we we always want people to use Joule for orchestration, but some people may have
Yeah.
other technologies that are available to use. And so being realistic and not trying to limit our customers, there'll be a few options. And I think that with these options that can orchestrate, anyone can publish agents, almost like a marketplace. Once you have an open marketplace across the board, then we can actually just yeah, have these few players provide the capabilities to orchestrate, and then anyone can create agents and register them and have them monetized.
Yeah. That's, I think, one of the most interesting questions in our space right now. And you see like even individual companies and AI native companies like playing around with these
Yes.
concepts a lot. Yeah. So we have like this one personalized agent and different skill sets, but still you probably won't get around integrating in MS Teams and in Microsoft Copilot and yeah, platforms like Joule. So
Yes.
yeah, that's going to be really interesting how things turn out there.
Yes, exactly. I agree. It'll be interesting to see how it shakes out.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Johannes.
We're already coming to an end for today. We keep
Okay.
this rather crisp, and it's
Okay.
such a dynamic space. So
Absolutely.
maybe we can touch base in
Sure.
9 months, 12 months or so again. And I'm sure a couple
Okay.
of things will have moved, and
Yes.
we'll come back to
Sure.
our predictions there. But for today,
Okay.
I really appreciate your time, all
Thank
these
you.
insights.
Thank you.
I wish you a great rest of the week, and then hope to see you soon again.
Thank you, Johannes. Appreciate your time. Thanks.
Take care, Walter. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye bye.
This was another episode of You&AI. Thank you for listening in. If you would like to hear more stories like this, I recommend you to subscribe to this podcast and visit workpath.com/AI. If you are driving the AI transformation in your own company, or if you are a leader who is interested in the dream agents we discuss here, we'd be happy to talk, and you can reach out via johannes@workpath.com or via our website.